Hello friends, it's Dave here from SaveDex and welcome to the third instalment of the SaveDex Podcast. Today's main event is going to be talking about not games as we usually do on this channel, but our favourite movie villains. So what is going on here? We are really going through a bit of a switch-up, you might say. Which brings me rather neatly onto my guest today, Glen from SwitchUp.
That's very droll, Dave. I like that, mate. Very droll.
I'm here to be droll, obviously. So, for those that might not know you, if you just introduce yourself, what is a Glen, and what exactly do you switch up?
Okay, well, a Glen is me, and what I switch up is Nintendo Switch games, to be perfectly honest. I am one half of a Nintendo Switch specific channel called, obviously, SwitchUp. I'm sure Dave will do the honours and put some links down somewhere if you want to come and have a look. And yeah, that is me.
Cool. So before we get on to our main event, there's a few things I want to go through just to document the week, really. Keep this as a sort of a diary as well. So the first thing I want to ask you, Glen, is what games have you been playing this week? I've
had a couple of games that I've been playing recently. Quite different games. You know, it's nice to, well, again, to switch it up, I suppose. But the main one I've been playing is Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Oh, yeah.
I picked that up again and been playing through that. Thoroughly enjoying that. Really good game, that one. I know it's hard. We've spoken about RPGs and finding the time and what have you. But if you do have any time, Dave, that's a great one to play.
Yeah.
And the other one is a platformer that, funny enough, I've just mentioned in one of my videos called Marsupial Army.
Right.
It's based on a European comic that I'd never heard of, I'll be honest. But it's just it's run-of-the-mill stuff. It's a 2D platformer, but it's actually really good. I found it for quite cheap on one of the websites physically and picked it up, and yeah, I've been having a good time with that.
Oh, brilliant. Cool. So to rattle off the games I've been playing here, I've been playing Gorogoa, Resident Evil 7, Archival, Nintendo Switch Sports, Castlevania, Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, Super Mario 64, Doom Eternal, and Just Cause 3.
Wow, that's a lot of games.
Repeat all that back to me.
You said Gorogoa, Resident Evil 7, Switch Sports. What do I get for getting free right? Do I win anything for that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'll give it that. So Gorogoa was it's on the Switch, but we played it on Game Pass. It's like it's sort of a puzzle game, and you swap the tiles round, and there's like people in the tiles, and you got to get them to progress for a story. But you can sort of zoom in and out on certain tiles as well to sort of make them match up with things. It's very, very, very complex. It seems quite simple at first, but it's very complex. And we're on we've done 4 chapters out of 6, so we're getting there. So that was pretty much the highlight. Resident Evil 7, I won't say anything about because I know you want to talk about Resident Evil with me in another discussion, don't you? So.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I've just finished Village actually. That was last week, but on the subject of Resident Evil.
Yeah, because I want to play Village, but I thought I'd best play Resident Evil 7 first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good shout.
So the next thing to talk about then is any sort of news highlights that have happened this week. And so there's been a few sort of obviously gaming news. So one thing is EA have ended their partnership with FIFA, so their football games aren't going to be called FIFA anymore. They're going to be called EA Sports FC. What do you make of this?
Yeah. I mean, well, the first thing to say is that's a terrible name.
Oh, yeah.
A truly terrible name. I don't know what they were thinking there, But when I first saw the headline, I did wonder why. I wondered whether it was down to just the license expiring or what have you, but which seems to be the case from what I've read. I think they wanted a lot more money for it this time, and EA said no, basically. It'll be interesting. I mean, this is a bold move by EA to not renew the license. Obviously, it's a hugely popular franchise, makes them a load of money. But I mean, in terms of potentially breaking a monopoly, it's great news because it means we'll get more sports games. I'm assuming the license may well get spread out across other companies. So it's always good to have more choice. So I'm very happy about it. I mean, I like FIFA, but I'm not a die-hard fan to the point where I'm unhappy to see other people have a go,
Yeah, it's like we're saying about like FIFA being like the big recognisable name. It's like it would be like if Call of Duty was suddenly called something else this year, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in this case, it's different because FIFA is the name of the organisation, and they have to buy the right. So I do understand that that's fair enough, but the name they've gone for is terrible. I mean,
do you think?
Honestly,
so because it says that FIFA are going to work with other developers, I don't think anything's been announced yet.
Yeah.
To carry on the FIFA name. So again, like everyone knows the name FIFA. You know, even like me, I know FIFA's like a real organisation, obviously, but I always thought FIFA was just the name of the game. I didn't know, it was that. So when it comes out and the other company, whoever they will be, release a FIFA game like FIFA 24, whatever year they do it, EA Sports FC has to compete with another company releasing a game called FIFA that everyone recognises.
I don't know if they'll do that this time. FIFA, as in the organisation FIFA, I have a feeling that they'll almost chop up their what they sell in terms of the license into packages. I have a feeling they'll do it that way this time, rather than give it to one company as they have done in the past. I think you might see something different this time, where you won't get another game called FIFA. They'll just buy certain parts of certain rights to football clubs or football leagues, do you know what I mean, international teams, and I think you'll see it spread out more evenly this time. That's just I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that's what they'll do.
Yeah, I remember, was it Pro Evo that couldn't use the proper team names?
Yes, yeah. So that was ISS to start with, wasn't it?
So will that happen to EA Sports?
I don't know. I mean, again, I read, or from what I read, I should say, it said they'll still retain some of the licenses, so it really does depend what FIFA have asked for in terms of money, obviously for the rights, for the license. If EA haven't taken the whole thing up, what they have taken up. So I think until more details emerge, it's kind of hard to see where it's going to take them. But just again, as I've said it twice already, but I'm flabbergasted that's the name they've gone for. It sounds like an esports team rather than a name for a game, doesn't it?
Esport. Oh, it's kind of like how that Street Fighter 6 logo just looks very esports branded rather than a Street Fighter logo, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I do get it. I mean, esports is growing all the time, but maybe the esports scene is so big now that's exactly what they want to target. But I would think there's much more scope for targeting, beg your pardon, just the more casual football fan. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't have any data to know it either way,
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is a few interesting things I've noticed when Nintendo sort of revealed their sales figures. So Nintendo Switch has sold over 107 million units. What do you think of that?
I mean, it's very impressive considering where the company were kind of post Wii U or mid Wii U, really, isn't it? I mean, they looked kind of dead and buried, really, in some respects, didn't they, at that point?
Yeah. Sold nearly 10 times as much as the Wii U coming up to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I can see why. I mean, I really enjoyed the Wii U. I know you did too, but when I first realised, because I didn't realise to start with, actually, I must be honest, but when I first realised you could take the gamepad away from the telly, I was like, oh wow, this is brilliant, and then took it about 2 metres away and it didn't work. I was like,
yeah. You couldn't take it to the toilet with you.
Nope, exactly right. So to see that they've taken that idea and obviously stepped it up with their next console, I can definitely see why the Switch has done as well as it has.
Yeah, definitely. So there's just a few games on this. I've got the chart in front of me. A few things that are sort of noteworthy is so Metroid Dread has sold 2.9 million at the time of this report, which that makes it the best-selling Metroid game. So that's really good for the series, I'd say.
Yeah, it's good to see that, good to hear that, because Nintendo are quite reluctant with some of their IPs, aren't they? If they don't feel that they're worthy, for want of a better word, of pursuing or of continuing, they're quite quick to drop them. So it's nice to see that one do well. I mean, I know obviously you've got Prime 4 at some point, but for me, it's always been about those 2D games. So to see a 2D game do well is encouraging.
Yeah, because I recently played through Metroid Fusion, and I really enjoyed that again. So yeah, I'm getting more. I want to play through Dread again now, but yeah, it's just really promising because it's like when they released Luigi's Mansion 3 and Pikmin 3 Deluxe, they sold better than we all thought they would. So it's the power of the Switch, I say. The Switch, these series that don't usually sell as well as they are now are just doing amazing on the Switch. So maybe we could see some more dormant franchises come back and see how well they do on the Switch. Maybe this could be a resurgence for a few other series, because I think Nintendo are going to see Metroid as a big player again after this.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I thought possibly once Mario Kart had its DLC, so obviously I'm talking first time round back on the Wii U, Mario Kart 8.
Yeah.
And it had like the F-Zero track in it, didn't it? I did wonder then if they were just testing the waters in terms of, seeing if there was anything left in that franchise, and it's been obviously quite a while since then, so I'm quite surprised, but it would be nice to see some of those franchises get another chance.
And those two tracks are insanely popular with Mario Kart players, so it's maybe they will. I'd like to see them test it, like bring out F-Zero again just to test it. It could be an HD port of F-Zero GX would go down a storm, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. Or F-Zero Collection, anything like that. But it's just not Nintendo's style, is it? Really? The collection. I mean, I know they've done it with Mario, but Mario literally prints money, doesn't he? That was never going to fail.
Yeah, of course. But the fact that they released Pikmin 3 on its own rather than the trilogy, or they released New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe instead of New Super Mario Bros. All Stars with all of them on, it shows that they will just take the latest one as an HD port. But then again, looking at this, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe has sold over 13 million, so they don't need to make a collection with that, really.
No, they don't. And it surprises me. I mean, we spoke about Metroid just now, that obviously they did release a trilogy for that series. And they've never really done it again. So I don't know what made them do it with that game, but or with those games. But yeah, it's not really their thing, is it?
No. So also I want to touch on something that shouldn't be surprising, but is Pokemon Legends Arceus has sold over 12.5 million in just a few months, which is really impressive. Wow. But it's Pokemon, you expect that. They always sell really well. But it's amazing because they released it just 2 months after the Diamond and Pearl remakes, which in themselves sold over 14.5 million. Did
they really? Wow, I didn't realise the numbers were that high, actually.
Yeah. And
it's that's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just, and then people are saying about, because we got Scarlet and Violet coming out, presumably November this year, and people are saying, it's, maybe there's a bit of burnout, maybe it's too many Pokemon games. I'm thinking, well, look at those sales, like, look how well they sold just 2 months apart, like, and then another one's going to be like 10 months later. I mean, it's got the Pokemon name, it's going to sell, but...
Yeah, absolutely. But I think they've been quite clever in how they've done it, because
and
obviously the two games you had, the remakes, I beg your pardon, and then you had Arceus, which was so different in style, and this new one, I'm assuming, is going to be some sort of hybrid. So it kind of piques, or it keeps people's interest, doesn't it,
Yeah, definitely. And because you look at Pokemon Sword and Shield are nearing 24 million they've sold over, which that's really high, isn't it?
It's crazy, yeah.
But yeah, it's just when you consider that the other sort of remake games on the Switch, Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, Diamond and Pearl have just outsold those. And when you consider that those Let's Go games were the only Pokemon games on the Switch at the time for like a year, obviously there was a smaller install base back then, that's probably to do with it. But the fact that people were saying how Diamond and Pearls, they were quote unquote lazy ports or remakes, and and there's a lot of quality of life features in newer games that aren't present here, like you were saying about the random battles and things like that. But people are still buying them.
Yeah. I think also they kind of struck gold with Diamond and Pearl, because I think the audience for that, or the people whose childhood were those games, are at a good age now to pick them up as adults. Do you know what I mean? Whereas maybe, I might be wrong, but the Let's Go games, which were kind of based off of Yellow, weren't they? Mostly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
As much as they were the games that we knew as kids, we're getting that bit older now, aren't we? You know.
Yeah, especially because the gameplay of the Let's Go games was targeted towards Pokemon Go players.
Yes, that's very true as well. Actually, I'd forgotten about that for a minute.
That's the main reason I don't own those games, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I forgot about that. Yeah, so
But
maybe they were just trying to convert mobile players into the Switch with that particular release. You know,
because if Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was as much of a remake of Yellow as the Diamond and Pearl games are, I would have snapped it up day one. I love Pokemon Yellow, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
And it's nice to see Kirby's done well as well, 2.65 million in just over a month.
That's I mean, do you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because I bought that about, I don't know, 2 weeks after launch, I think.
Yeah.
And I've played a bit of it. I'm enjoying it. It's a good game. But there's a toy shop, a fairly large toy shop near me where I live, and the few times I've been in there recently with the kids, that game is still sold out. Like, it's been sold out for about a month now in there. Yeah, it's not been in stock for about a month, or about 3 weeks.
Nice. So very impressive sales going on here. Can't wait to see what the upcoming releases do. So the next thing to talk about is the last news item today. Is yesterday we got a Indie World, and I just want to talk about. Did you manage to watch that one, Glenn?
I watched you watch it. I watched your stream, as it happens.
You watched me watch it.
I watched you watch it. Yeah, I was getting the kids from school when it was on, because it was on like 3:00 our time, UK time, wasn't it? So I couldn't watch it at the time.
So did you see my little slip up at the beginning?
I did. I was going to say my favourite part of it was actually watching you watch the wrong direct for the first 5 minutes.
I'll mention it now just so people can check it. I'm keeping the stream up. So basically it does the 10-minute countdown, and when it was like 6 minutes left to go, it suddenly started, and I was like, oh, okay, it started early, and people were coming onto the stream by then and sort of missing the beginning. And they showed like a Jet Set Radio style game, which I thought, oh wow, that looks cool. I don't know about that. And then it showed Toem, and I thought, is that a sequel to Toem or an update? But then they were talking about Toem like it's a new game, and I was like, but that came out last year. And that's when I realised, because I was talking about, I was about to show on the webcam something on the shelf, and because I was watching this on the capture card hooked up to the Wii U on the YouTube there. That's how I was streaming it. And I knocked the gamepad when I was reaching for something, and that loaded another video, like an Indie World from last year. So I was reacting to something that came out a year ago. But luckily I realised before the real stream started. And so honestly, if I had never heard of Toem, I would have watched that whole thing or gotten further in without realising it wasn't you.
I've got to be honest, I was so disappointed when you realised, because it would have been so funny if you'd have sat through like the whole half an hour, like uploaded it, and everyone would be like, this is not right.
Oh man. So what was your favourite 2 games from Indie World?
I'll be honest, it was fine. There wasn't anything there that really maybe Gunbrella, was it called?
Yes, that was one of mine.
Yeah, and the crab one, another crab. What was it called?
Those were the 2 I picked.
Oh really?
Both out next year. Another Crab's Treasure. It's like a Souls-like. I wasn't expecting it to say Souls-like when I saw how it started.
Yeah,
you're like a little hermit crab taking people's sort of rubbish that's been put in the sea and using them as like helmets, shields, and you got like there's stuff like showing like grapple hooks to climb on things and stuff. It looks like a proper 3D adventure game, but you're a hermit crab.
Yeah, I did. That one did pique my interest. It was, yeah. I mean, what did you make of it on the whole? It was. I thought it was fine, but nothing that really kind of grabbed me. What about you?
Yeah, most of it, because I mean, I'm not really keeping up with indie games at the minute, like what's coming out and stuff. But
Yeah,
so it's kind of hard, and sometimes when you find them out, like how many was there, like 15, 20 games we saw, if you count the sizzle reel. And it's like, I can't remember most of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's why Gunbrella looks cool. It's a Metroidvania, I think. But I love the concept that you got this one item that's like, it's a gun, it's a shield. You can glide with it. You can use it as a zipline thing and use it as a melee weapon. They got this one thing that can do so many different things. I really like that, how flexible that is.
It's always a good mechanic to do that.
Okay, but there's two other games I took note of that got shadow dropped yesterday. One of them was called Mini Motorway, which kind of looked like a phone game, but it was like you're managing like road building to keep congestion down. That looks like it could be quite addicting, but it's £12, so no thank you.
Yeah.
That's the price drop game. And the other one was called Gibbons Beyond the Trees.
What was that one?
That was just in that was in the sizzle reel. It's like it's got like a cartoony sort of painted almost art style, and the monkeys themselves are like different, like one's pink, one's blue, whatever, and it's kind of like a 2D platformer with swinging mechanics, kind of like the Donkey Kong Country sort of thing, and it just looks really good. And it's currently on sale 33% off, so it's like £8. So I might pick that up. But here's the thing. Both those games got shadow dropped yesterday. They are currently on the eShop like the 7th and 8th row down.
Yeah, it's crazy.
After a day.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's
such a bad design.
Yeah, things get lost. So if I hadn't seen them in the indie world, I wouldn't have even noticed them appearing. Yeah.
It's terrible. But I mean, the only other digital store I've got access to is the PlayStation one, but I don't think that's much better. I don't think there's one.
Xbox as well. Xbox is so hard to navigate as well. I think it's just when you have so many games, even when you sort of unless you know what you're looking for, you can type it in. Like even if you look like Switch games on Amazon and stuff, you're going to have to scroll through a lot to actually find something you don't know about. So it's digital stores in general, I do agree, are just
it's not great.
No. So should we move on to our main feature?
Yeah, let's do it.
So so we're going to talk about our favourite movie villains. We have talked about gaming, so we are legit. I'm going to throw you a curveball, because I've sent you an agenda of what we're going to talk about, but I'm going to throw you a quick question that I haven't warned you about. Who is your favourite video game villain?
Okay, let me have a think.
And it can't be a movie-based game.
Oh, that's just made it harder. Okay. I don't know about favourite, but I think possibly most iconic might be Bowser in Mario 64.
Oh yeah.
Because there's so much about that game. It's hard to maybe imagine now because of the way that gaming has evolved, but that game was so groundbreaking.
It was,
Having that, it was, wasn't it? And having that fight in 3D, swinging him round by the tail. The only thing I'd say that diminishes it slightly is the fact that you did it 3 times through the game.
Yeah, but it's kind of a trend with the Mario games. Like in the original, you fight Bowser. Well, it's obviously clones of Bowser, but you fight 8 times just by jumping over him to get the key. And it's kind of a trend with the Mario games that they repeat the Bowser fight. But one thing about that was you had the analog stick was like a brand new thing, so they tended. I wonder if that was on purpose. Like, analog stick, you can rotate that, so let's use it in the boss fight.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah.
But I would say that was my one, just because there was so much about that game that stands out in my mind, and it's not. I mean, it is the game, obviously, but it's more that game bringing gaming into a new era. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I usually gravitate towards sort of Bowser or Robotnik, Dr. Eggman as people call him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but in a way, sort of as characters, sometimes they're good guys and help you. So there's quite a lot of depth to them.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So let's move on to movie villains. So how we're going to break this down is I've chosen sort of 4 categories that have multiple villains in. Then we're going to just do the rest. So the first category is the best Batman villains, and we're talking about movie adaptations, so not comics or TV shows, whatever, just the best movie Batman villains. So who's your pick?
This was the hardest one to choose out of every category we're going to go through, but I did ultimately go for Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman in
Nice.
Batman Returns. I mean, there is the obvious that I was, quite young back then, and obviously growing up with those films, she looked incredible in that film.
Reaching puberty.
Reaching puberty, absolutely, and all that. But going past that, because it is so much more than that, she played the part with so much sass and so much confidence. How she went from like the meek secretary. I know it was a bit of a contrived change. It was literally on, she went 180 over the course of the event that happens to her. But once she became Catwoman, she just nailed it. And the scene in the when she's in like the department store and she's like whipping the mannequins' heads off, and she skips with the whip and stuff. She's just so cool. And that scene when she's first introduced, when you've got Batman and Penguin,
and she sort of flips in and goes meow.
It's just awesome. So possibly on, I mean, there are definitely villains with more depth in the Batman movies. The new Riddler being one that I'm pretty sure you'll probably pick being another, but just for that iconic look and the style and sass that she showed, it has to be Catwoman for me.
And I also liked her costume in it, because you could sort of see it was kind of like a clumsy stitching design. Like it wasn't invisible mending at all. Like
no, not at all. No, but that again, that's Tim Burton, isn't it? With the almost like the patchwork quilt costume, as you say, and the obviously with the Penguin in that film as well. Grossly different to what you were used to at the time. I loved Tim Burton's take on the Batman villains. So again, that's probably that's tied into my choice as well. Yeah.
So for my pick, I've gone with the obvious one.
Yeah.
And that is the one that this became a phenomenon, didn't it? Like Halloween costumes, and that is the Dark Knight, Heath Ledger's Joker. I mean, what can we say about this villain? Heath Ledger's performance for a start. His look, like it was different to any Joker design I had personally seen before. Then obviously you might have seen something similar because you're more into Batman than I am. Just the fact that his makeup wasn't sort of tidy, and and his how he it's the that tongue thing he did.
Mm-hmm.
And when, in my experience in the theatre, and I'm making that sound more bigger than it is, it was Amdram, I was always told that to really become a character, well, one thing that helps you become a character is to adopt a few sort of habits that you don't normally do.
Okay.
So one thing, for example, there was one play where I wore glasses in it, and whenever my character was reading something, I would sort of put my hand like holding my glasses as if I need to hold them still. That was just something I thought my character does that, and things like that just help you get into a character. So things like him doing the thing that he does with his tongue, and like in Dark Knight Rises when Bane sort of holds his jacket puts his hands up like he does.
Yeah, near his collar and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like things like that really help you see a character rather than the actor. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and to be like, because the Joker just wants, I mean, he's all about like causing like chaos in this one, and like, and he's sort of unpredictable as well. Even they show that early on, sort of towards midway, where he tells a story about how he got his scars, and then later on he tells a completely different origin story. So you're like, you really don't know where you stand with this guy.
Yeah, and I quite liked with him how at the start of the film, or as he's introduced, his main his motive seems to be about money. He goes to the mob and says, "I'll kill Batman for you," doesn't he? And then he burns the money and says it's about chaos, or whatever he says. I can't
sending a
message. That's it. That's right. And I'd always wondered. I don't know if it's ever made explicit. I can't remember now whether he genuinely just has a change of heart when he gets to see Batman and kind of loves the rivalry, or whether that was his plan all along to burn the money. You know.
Or did he even have a plan?
yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
One thing on talking, did he have a plan? But we know he can plan things well, because he gets caught like halfway through the film, but that was, he wanted to get caught. He because he has that whole thing about he has Harvey Dent and Rachel kidnapped in 2 areas, and then Batman interrogates him, and he's got that whole like his lackey who has like the exploding phone in his stomach, and so it's all part of the plan, I think he says at one point, doesn't he? So he must have some sort of idea of what he's doing to have orchestrated all that, and it's something we'll get into in a later villain as well. But my God, it's like these heroes need to learn a lesson. Like, if you catch your main villain and you're only halfway through the film, then that villain wanted to get caught.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. Yeah, he should have looked at the runtime, shouldn't he, Batman?
Yeah. And but now, if we mentioned it on the previous recording we did, but I wasn't my audio got corrupted, so I couldn't upload it. But when we're talking about Batman before, I love it when Gordon gets promoted to commissioner and you just see the Joker just clapping him. I just love moments like that when the villain's sort of doing stuff like that.
I think that was done on the spot by Heath Ledger, wasn't it? I don't think that was in the script.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, Heath Ledger really gave everything to that role, and
that was incredible.
Yeah, and sadly he passed away before the film came out, but he did win an Oscar for the role in the end, which he did well deserved.
Yeah, it was a fantastic performance. I remember when the film was coming out. See, when this new Batman film came out, I stayed away from everything. I didn't want to know. I didn't even know until very, very late in who the villain was. I was quite happy to just go in blind and you know. But back then, I couldn't wait. I was on websites every day trying to find out information. And they did that. They did the Why So Serious campaign, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they did like the Vote for Harvey Dent thing as well. And I remember there was a website, and it had a picture, you know, the quite iconic picture now of like his face, and he's got, like, his eyes are kind of blacked out, and you can just see the smile, and you could see it was like a like a Glasgow Kiss sort of smile, and it said it played one line of his audio, and I can't think what it said now. I think it said, "I'm a man of my word" or something. I think it was that line.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant, and I must have played that little clip so many times, you know.
Oh, that "I'm a man of my word." Oh, that bit where he sends that video, or the news are playing that video of him talking to the camera.
Yeah, I'm sure it was that line. It was a line, and I think they had that line, and they had Alfred saying, "Some men just want to watch the world burn." They just had these 2 little audio files on the website. Oh man, it was just that was a good advertising campaign. That viral campaign was great.
But I feel like it would do a disservice not to mention a few other Joker actors as well, because the Joker's been played by some fantastic actors, plus Jared Leto. You know, Jack Nicholson, going back to the Tim Burton. Son. I mean, he was, because I didn't see that film till I was an adult. I think I hadn't seen Dark Knight at that point because it wasn't out yet. But he was more of a gangster Joker, I think, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He was like the second in command to the main mob boss.
Yeah.
And he was cheating with his missus, and then he kind of set him up and he fell into the vat of chemicals, didn't he? And obviously that was that. But I loved Jack Nicholson's Joker. I mean, Jack Napier, that kind of before Joker character, was pretty much just Jack Nicholson, you know. But I still love that look, you know. Like whenever you see a still of Jack Nicholson as the Joker,
his look was so good.
Oh, it was brilliant. You know, as much as since then you've got that kind of grimy makeup, as you mentioned, makeup not perfect, and you know, long straggly hair. I do like where they've gone with that, but that kind of classic, almost cleaner cut Joker still has a place for me, and Jack Nicholson's version was fantastic.
Yeah, he looked very sort of comic, like he was out of a comic book, didn't he? When he had the whole makeup getting up, and that was so good. And then we got Cesar Romero, who there was a Batman film, wasn't there?
There was, 1966.
So that counts.
Yeah. Cesar Romero, I mean, I liked his take on it. He kind of had that maniacal aspect to it, the laugh, and obviously the moustache, which was crazy that he wouldn't shave his moustache off, just painted over it. But
part of the chaos.
I like Cesar Romero. Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with, or it's not a problem as such, but you had Frank Gorshin as the Riddler and you had Cesar Romero as the Joker, and they were quite similar in some ways.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
And I think they kind of trod on each other's toes a little bit, but obviously back then there was very little to go on. There's not as much source material as there is today, and I think back then it was all about, not necessarily in terms of style, but in terms of look, it was all about transferring it pretty much from the page to the screen, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then you got one that I don't know if you could sort of count it as a Batman continuity Joker, but Joaquin Phoenix as well.
Oh, what a film that is! I love that film.
It marks 2 actors have now won an Oscar for playing the Joker.
Yeah. That film is fantastic. I love that.
I saw that twice at the cinema. I had to see it again.
Yeah, it's such a good film. I don't know if it. I mean, it doesn't sit in continuity, does it? I'm pretty sure they've confirmed that already. But what a performance, and what a great film! It really did go to show what comic book films can be, you know. And sometimes I lament the fact they've become so dark and gritty, and it seems to happen when you become a parent, because I've been watching the Batman films with my daughter. I told you, didn't I? Recently.
You subjected her to a certain film today.
Yeah. I couldn't show her the Tim Burton one. She's not old enough, so I kind of had to go with Forever and Batman and Robin. But that's kind of my point, is that I would like to be able to take her to the cinema.
So we can talk about those villains when we get to the comedy section later.
Oh, all day long, yeah. But I would like to take her to the cinema to see a Batman film. But as much as I love, the new one, the Batman, because everything's so realistic and gritty and grimy these days, you can't take your kids to the cinema to see a film anymore, And so I do get that. I do think it's a shame that that's been lost. But as an adult, I do obviously enjoy that, the more realistic take on things. And that Joker, the Joaquin Phoenix one, was, it was just brilliant.
Man, yeah, we should talk about that film in its own separate...
for sure, definitely.
I mean, there's so much about that film to analyse, isn't there?
Absolutely.
But on the topic of taking a kid to see a Batman film, maybe they'll do Lego Batman 2. There you go.
Yeah, maybe.
Seems to be the only way, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're probably right, actually. I don't think they'll go comedic or child-friendly with live action again, because I think they'll be too scared of losing such a big audience,
Yeah, true. So we'll go. Maybe we'll touch back on the Batman sort of Forever and all that later on, because we are going to talk about Jim Carrey later on in the comedy section. And so we're going on to the next category, which is James Bond villains. James Bond to me is what Batman is to you, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
that's my big movie series. So there's so many villains to choose. This was a hard choice for me, really, which one to narrow down. Because usually when I think Bond villains, immediately Oddjob comes to mind, or Jaws, but there's more the henchman. Yeah. So I wanted to go with a main villain, and then you think something like Goldfinger, Blofeld, Hugo Drax, so through. But really coming down to it, I've got to go with Alec Trevelyan. from GoldenEye, played by Sean Bean. So the thing about Trevelyan is, the fact is, obviously I did my recording with Jeffrey recently talking about the game GoldenEye. That's how I got into James Bond originally, and Alec Trevelyan's in the game there. But Sean Bean starts off as a good guy in the pre-credits scene, although he's obviously already betraying Bond. He's just pretending to be his friend still. And he's 006, he's an MI6 agent, and your actual pick for the Bond villain is kind of similar in this regard. But turns out he's actually a turning traitor, because he's the fact that his parents were Cossacks who committed suicide. He feels like his country betrayed him, so that's why he defects in this way. He fakes his own death at the beginning, which, by the way, he has a lot of trust in Oromov here, because obviously Oromov's the one that shoots him dead, but he's not really dead. It must have been a blank or something. But in that very, very scene when Bond's escaping using the gas tanks as a shield, one of Oromov's soldiers accidentally fires his gun just nervously, and Oromov just pulls his gun out and shoots the soldier. So Oromov must have had real bullets in that gun as well, just to point out. But then he goes on a bit more of a personal vendetta against Bond, because Bond reduces the timer on the bombs from 6 minutes to 3, so Trevelyan didn't get out of that facility in time, so he got badly scarred in the weapons. But the fact is, this guy, he knows Bond. He was friends with him. He has the same training as him. Like when Bond gets into his base towards the end, he plants the mines to blow up the place, but Trevelyan just takes his watch and just knows how to defuse the mines, because he's had that before. Then he didn't count on the exploding pen, did he? So, but I just love the dialogue they share. Like, he explains like what he's doing. He knows Bond so well. He talks about all the vodka martinis to drown out the screams of all the men you've killed or the women you failed to protect. I love lines like that. And it's just such. And so people criticize this guy for talking too much. Like at the end when he points a gun at him, says, he doesn't just shoot Bond, does he? He just goes, "You know what, James? I was always better," and that gives Bond enough time to lower the ladder before he shoots. And but your pick, I actually watched Skyfall today. Your pick actually does the same mistake. So there.
I think that's the classic villain trope, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. And also the iconic "For England, James" line. I love that as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, I remember when I first met you, so we're going back a long time, and I remember, I don't know why or in what context, but you'd said or had it written down "For England, James," and I hadn't seen GoldenEye at the time. I didn't get the reference at all. I didn't understand until you explained it to me. As you mentioned, mine is Skyfall, and it's Raoul Silver, I believe his name is, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I watched that. As I said, I watched that film earlier today. Not to prepare for this, I just wanted to watch Skyfall. It's a great film.
Yeah, it's a great film. I went to the cinema to see it, and as you mentioned at the start, I'm not as big a Bond fan as you by any stretch, but I do enjoy some of the films, and this was the first villain that I can think of that I genuinely, you kind of always think, well, Bond's going to win because that's how movies work for the most part. Yeah. But with this villain, I whilst watching it at the cinema, it was the first time ever that I'd watched a Bond film and thought that James Bond could lose.
Yeah.
He was just so calculated. He was so clinical in his plan. It was a fantastic performance by the actor. Just such a good villain.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but is it Javier Bardem, the actor?
Okay, right. But what a performance! And there were so many levels to it. Because you had, as you mentioned, the former MI6 agent. Yeah. He had a vendetta similar to with James Bond and Trevelyan. This time, though, it was with M, wasn't it?
Yes, and it's sort of because he saw M as like a mother figure as well, because he keeps calling her mummy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I liked the fact that the vendetta wasn't with James Bond, because I think when it's with James Bond, it's kind of this is personal. When it's someone else he has to protect, it adds another level of danger.
Yeah, because Bond, like as a soldier, as a agent, he's prepared to die. You know, I mean, obviously he'll survive if he can, but he would have. It's like when I watch 24 with Jack Bauer. Like Jack Bauer is prepared to die at all times, but really, when the villain's someone you care about is going to die, that's where it becomes, oh my god, I must stop you.
Absolutely. And funny enough, I mean, my second pick, it wasn't close. I mean, Silver was the clear winner, but my second pick was both the villains in License to Kill, for a similar reason.
Yeah, that's your favourite one, isn't it?
Yeah, because Felix Leiter obviously this time is the friend of his that gets hurt, and I mean, I really do like that film. But Silver is clearly, or for me at least, he's clearly the better villain. But I did love the dynamic of that film, and the two villains in that were great as well. Yeah,
I mean, first of all, for Silver, like, what an entrance, by the way. You have that shot of Bond, like he's tied to the chair, and Silver sort of comes down in that lift, and the camera angle is just one shot, doesn't cut away at all, of him coming out of the lift and walking towards Bond and telling this sort of anecdote about rats. And it's a metaphor for their situation, saying about how to get rid of the rats on the island. They baited them to come into this oil drum, kept them all in there until they had no choice but to eat each other, until there was two rats standing, and him and Bond are the two rats standing now.
It's so very sinister.
Yeah, and the fact is, like, okay, here's the thing though, just to show how clever this guy is, and I referenced this about the Joker as well. You're halfway through the film and you've caught the main villain. He wanted to get caught. Q says that this plan must have been years in the making. So, so at least 2 years ago, Silver must have known that M would have this, because obviously he blows up MI6 building because he knows where their backup building is. So he knows he'll get captured there. It's sort of underground. And so he must have known that action and outing the agents would cause M to have this disciplinary hearing in the building she's in. And he must have known that at that point, when they capture him, they would confiscate his computer. Q would then, at that very, not even hesitating to do it, just hook up Silver's computer to MI6's so that Silver's virus can affect MI6's whole security system. And not only that, but Q has trouble hacking into it, but Bond happens to notice something. So if Bond wasn't in the room there, Q wouldn't have been able to hack in, by the way. So Silver then gets out, goes down underneath, because he must have known what room he'd be in. He gets onto the London Underground. There are two men there that hand him a package containing a police officer's uniform, knowing they had to be that at that precise moment. He manages to get on a train, get off at his stop. Bond's chasing him at this point, and he gets off, and then he goes under this thing here, and as Bond shoots at him but misses, Silver pushes a button which explodes this part of the wall, and then an underground train happens to be coming by at that precise second to hit Bond. He must have known to do all that at least 2 years beforehand. That's how clever this guy is.
Yeah, well, that's how contrived the script was anyway. But yeah,
it's you switch your brain off for these sorts of films, don't you? It's just whenever you try and analyse something like this, it's
yeah, absolutely.
But
any film where the villain gets caught early, just don't try and work out how or why, because it never holds up to scrutiny.
Throw away the key.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, he's a great performer. And the thing I was mentioning as well is another thing. So all throughout this, and he all does it so he can get into that building M is in, disguised as a police officer, which, by the way, he could have done that without being caught. I'll just point that out. So all through this, he has that whole he's in control. Even when he's captured, he's still quite calm. He's saying to M about, he shows that thing where he bit into the cyanide and it's just melted his mouth. And he shows, villain has a defect, so that's par for the course there.
Yeah.
And he's all so calm and stuff. But when you get to Skyfall itself, and Bond is in charge here, like they've fooled him, they've set up the Home Alone traps there. You notice how manic Silver is there. Like, he's not calm anymore. He's not in control anymore because he's not in control of the situation. And it's just such a difference in that bit. And then to the point where he has Bond at gunpoint on the ice and his henchman's there as well, but he just stops and talks to him so Bond has time to shoot the ice and fall down before he can pull the trigger. It's just another trope from Bond, that. And
yeah.
And here's the thing about Silver as well. He wins, in a way.
Yeah.
And
he achieves what he wanted to achieve, doesn't he? Absolutely, yeah. Exactly.
I'll have to put in the title, actually. We're going to spoil some films, but...
yeah, definitely. I think he's a great villain. As I said, obviously you're the Bond person, not me, but I always wished that Blofeld was portrayed more like that than he ever seemed to be in all of his films. He was always a bit too moustache twirling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was just the time. Like, I think
but
Christoph Waltz wasn't utilised as well as he could have been.
Yeah, and it's funny because Christoph Waltz is going to come up again later.
Yeah, definitely.
And he could have been so scary, but they just didn't quite get it right, did they?
No, I agree with that. Also, another thing I took note of with Silver as well is when... because he wants to kill M and himself at the same time with the gun. But when he's about to do it, Bond throws a knife in his back. And it's just the way he turns to look at Bond and he does this sort of expression like as if to say, oh, come on, before he dies. I really like that because in a way, okay, he gets... His goal is for him to die and that happens, but... He's not the one who gets to do it, so I suppose in a way he doesn't win, and he doesn't know that M's dead, so... No.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, but fantastic performance from him. Great villain. I mean, I do like that whole ones that have a personal... It's not just they want to take over the world, it's a personal story.
Yeah, definitely.
And even when he explains his reasons, like M abandoning him before, and M shows no remorse for it, you understand his motivation, but obviously his way of going about it is wrong. M
is quite harsh in this film, isn't she? Like I know obviously his actions have kind of gotten rid of any potential sympathy by that point, but she doesn't have any real moment of reflection, or maybe a little bit, but she's a little bit harsh, isn't she,
Oh yeah, but to be honest, I mean, she's going through a lot of crap herself at that point, isn't she, with her hearing and all that. Maybe it's that.
Yeah.
All she does is read a poem, though, at that hearing, so I don't know. Okay, so, yes... So we're going to go on to a bit more moustache twirly, I suppose. We're going to go on to Disney villains.
Yep.
So let's start with... You've chosen two here, so we'll go for your first one.
Okay, I chose two because one of them isn't really a villain. They're kind of one of the antagonists, but... Right, my main one is Jafar. I think he's, as villain as you can get. He is the ultimate moustache twirler, isn't he,
Yeah, that's right.
And I love the dynamic in Aladdin. I mean, it's a great film anyway, but you had the over-the-top hero in the genie. Obviously, Aladdin is he's the hero, but in terms of characters, you had that big, larger-than-life genie, and then you had that the more sinister, the more the quieter, the more behind-the-scenes Jafar, and I just felt it was a great dynamic.
Yeah, Aladdin is the hero, but the genie is the star. That's how I
absolutely. Put it. Yeah, couldn't have put it better myself. That's definitely how it was. And Jafar was just such a, he's one of those villains. You got different classes of villain, and he was kind of those stirrers. He was behind the scenes stirring it up. manipulating people, moving the chess pieces, which I liked. And he had obviously, what was his name?
Iago.
The parrot, Iago, yeah.
His voice actor died a few weeks ago.
Yeah. No, that was
Gilbert
sad.
Gottfried,
But
sad. It's a very recognisable voice he had.
Yeah, definitely. But they were a great double act. They bounced off each other very well.
Yeah. They were like polar opposites, really.
Absolutely. So yeah, Jafar, in terms of the traditional villain, would be my favourite. But in terms of kind of my favourite character who you could class as a villain, I guess, it's King Louis from the Jungle Book. When
you say that, when I watched the Jungle Book as a child, I never realised he was meant to be a villain.
Yeah, because he doesn't. I mean, they're dancing about and having fun for most of his time, aren't they?
He's always smiling, like, and not an evil smile, a nice smile, like.
Absolutely. I mean, he just wants what he wants. He doesn't really have a care about Shere Khan or what's happening in the story. He just wants Mowgli to tell him how to make fire. Absolutely. But he's my favourite, antagonist, if you like. And I also really liked the Christopher Walken voiced.
I was going to bring him up because he is clearly a villain in that.
Oh, that exactly. And if you get Christopher Walken with that voice, man, that's what you're getting. You're getting a villain, aren't you?
Yeah.
But he was great. I like that film. I don't know what the general consensus was, but I really liked that version of the Jungle Book. And he was, I think was he called like a Gigantopithecus or something, wasn't he? The name of the animal, the species in that one, because he was huge, wasn't he?
Gigantimus or something like that.
Something, yeah. And it was, and I liked how they redid the song. They kind of slowed it down and made it a bit more talky, but it was clever the way they got the song in there still.
He's a Gigantopithecus.
Gigantopithecus, there we go. Yeah. But
he's meant to be an orangutan. But,
they just went big, didn't they? They just
made him massive, yeah.
Yeah, but they're my picks anyway, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. On Jafar, one thing I love about Jafar. Now, Jafar was almost my pick for this. He was a very close second, but there was only one deciding factor as to why he wasn't my pick. But I'll get to that. But what I love about, like you said, he's a cool customer. He's like, he gets a bit frustrated at times when something goes wrong, but he's mostly speaks very softly. And we see a bit of a more crazy side to him earlier on when he's disguised as the old man, and all that. But when he gets the lamp and he goes absolutely manic with the crazy laugh over the top, and it's like. Well, it's kind of like with Silver as well. Like, he's quite calm and cool about things, but when he loses control in himself as well. And Jafar, when he gets the power, that's when he loses control. And that's sort of and the fact that he sees himself and his ego is ultimately what costs him when Aladdin tricks him into becoming a genie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that the Super Nintendo Aladdin game was one of my favourite games as a kid definitely helped establish Jafar as one of my favourite villains as well,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So anyway, my Disney villain is Scar from The Lion King.
Oh, okay. Quite clever, quite similar.
Yeah, in a similar way. He is manipulating behind the scenes. Like, he tricks Simba into going to the elephant graveyard. And hoping the hyenas would kill him, but they fail, so he then has a bigger plot to kill Mufasa. This is all from Hamlet, apparently. I don't know the play Hamlet at all, but apparently this is all based on Hamlet. So he brings Simba to the canyon and tells him to practice his roar, and then Simba's roar happens just before the hyenas set off the wildebeest, so Simba thinks he started the stampede, so Scar throws Mufasa down. Spoilers, sorry. And he's hoping Simba dies as well, but he doesn't. So he takes the opportunity to make Simba think that he's the one that killed Mufasa, which is a bit messed up when you think about it. And this is the big flaw, and I think it's this down to just villains being too arrogant stuff. He doesn't kill Simba there. He sets the hyenas to kill him, but he's just but then the hyenas pretend that he did, and then he then becomes the king. That's basically the character. So the one thing, so it's very similar, and when he's the king, he does a terrible job of it. He basically, the herds all move on. There's no food for anyone because they escape the hyenas, and they don't mind the lions killing them, but the hyenas, that's too much. And but the real thing, so he does the whole what Jafar does. He's behind the scenes manipulating things. The one thing that sets him apart from Jafar for me is his song, "Be Prepared."
Right.
That is my favourite Disney song ever, and it's so underrated. I've got the Now That's What I Call Disney CD. That is the only Lion King song that's not on that CD. It was pretty much omitted from the live action remake, but there was a lot I didn't like about that remake. But I just love that song so much. I mean, I've got it. It's on the Amazon Music thing. I listen to it quite a lot on there. And even seeing the stage show as well. Have you seen The Lion King on stage?
I haven't, as it goes, no.
It's so good. I've seen it twice. I'm seeing it for the third time in October. But, I mean, nice. That song's really brought to life. They all are, really. But, yeah, it's just that song, "Be Prepared," where he gets the hyenas properly on his side. And they do the whole Hitler and the Nazis... what do you call it? Like referencing that in there, just symbolising that, and it just goes all big. And to the fact where Jeremy Irons, who voices Scar, actually, when he does the line, "You won't get a sniff without me," he actually lost his voice at that. His voice gave out. So Jim Cummings, who did the voice of Ed, the hyena, actually takes over for the rest of that song, and it's so seamless. He impersonates Jeremy Irons so well you don't even know it's a different person singing. How would you replace a voice actor within the same song, like the next line, and have it not be noticeable?
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't even know that, actually.
Yeah, so that's why Scar's my favourite villain. Just that song alone. We get to go on to horror. Yeah,
now this is my sort of... so I love horror.
There's a lot we could have said here.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I'm such a horror fan that there are 20 I could have picked, but at the same time there was only one that I could pick, you know?
Yeah.
And that is the main man, that's Freddy Krueger. A Nightmare on Elm Street was probably the first horror film I ever saw. When I was a kid, I'm talking, I don't know, 6, 7 maybe, I had some friends that lived down my road that were older than me. They were kind of 15, 16. And they showed me, I watched Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street around their house. And it terrified me, like absolutely terrified me.
Well, didn't you bring that on yourself though, because they showed you RoboCop and you were like, "Oh, that was fine."
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, mate. If I told you this story before, they did. They showed me RoboCop, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not scared. That's fine." They were like, oh, "Okay, well then watch this one," and then we watched. Well, next time I was around there, like we watched some Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh man, I had some nightmares that night. That's for sure. But I just love the character. I love everything about him. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, as much as it's not my favourite film, I think it's underrated, but it's not my favourite film, but I think that's Freddy Krueger at his scariest. I think they nailed it there. 3 is very good if you like the more comedic Freddy, because it starts to become introduced. It's not over the top, but it's there. And then from 4 onwards, unfortunately, they do overdo it. For me, for my taste anyway. But his whole backstory, you know, being a child killer, being murdered by the parents after being released without charge, or being not being convicted of his crimes, coming back and haunting children, or you know, the children of the parents in their dreams. Oh man, like what a creation by Wes Craven, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we made it a tradition to watch that film every Halloween, didn't we? For a few years.
And Robert Englund, like, he is Freddy Krueger, you know, and you could tell he loved the role, and he really went for it as the films went on. And I don't like over the top comedic Freddy, so it's a shame that after, say, the third film, possibly you got New Nightmare as well, but the others, that I don't like that Freddy Krueger, and I do wish they'd have toned it down or reined it in a bit. Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't matter now.
We mentioned that on our Halloween discussion about when you overuse a villain and they become marketable, it does take away from the fear factor of them. And I've seen the first 4 Nightmare films. I only remember the first one vividly.
Right, yeah.
And it's
the first one was, you know, he was still in the shadows a lot. You could kind of see the burnt skin and the, you know, obviously the claws and stuff, and you did get to see a bit more of him towards the end. They used a slightly different voice as well. It was a little bit more menacing. It was a bit lower pitched. The second one, like I say, they really got the character right there for me. In terms of, not necessarily in terms of what he does, because he comes out into the real world and they kind of break their own rules a little bit, but in terms of how scary he is, I think the second film is his peak, you know? Yeah.
Was the fourth one where he gets resurrected by a dog weeing on him?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, man. The fourth one, like, a lot of people like the fourth one.
I don't remember it.
I really dislike it. I think maybe I'm in the minority here, but there are so many silly moments in that film. I mean, you've mentioned that one there. You have the bloody karate fight. He fights one of them with karate, and Freddy's not even there. They basically ran out of budget, and they were going to have this big scene against this kid that was a karate expert, but because they ran out of budget, he's just kicking mid-air, like thin air. Freddy's not even there. It's terrible. It's not good.
Which one is he playing Nintendo on?
I think that's the fifth one. And he says, like, great graphics or something, doesn't he?
Killer graphics.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah. But the character, I mean, the thing is, as much as I don't like the comedic Freddy, it's that made him iconic. You know, that's what made him such a pop culture icon. So I can't deny him in it. It's all part of the fun. But when I'm watching the films, I don't like the last few because of that. Especially Freddy's Dead, by the way. I can't believe we haven't mentioned that one. That is quite possibly the worst film I've ever seen. That's the sixth one.
That's the sixth one.
It's terrible.
What about Freddy versus Jason?
I liked that film. I did.
I've not seen it.
That's worth watching. You know, it's a lot of Jason fans didn't like it because they used a different actor from the one that had played him in the last few films previous to that, and they kind of made Jason a sympathetic character. You don't do that. You just have the two villains fight it out, you know. But
did they make Jason the hero?
Kind of, you know, as much as you can make him a hero. They kind of had to rely on Jason to stop Freddy, despite the fact that Jason kills way more people than Freddy in that film.
That's
you know.
True. But yeah, back on Freddy though, like, it's just the whole concept that you're not safe in your dreams.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is scary. It was based on a story that Wes Craven had read about a child that had been complaining of nightmares, was terrified to go to sleep, and they found him dead one morning.
Wow.
And he also pulled a lot of things from his childhood, like the name Freddy Krueger was the name of a boy that bullied him at school.
Okay.
And he's the clothes he wears, the top and the hat were like it was either, I can't remember now, I did read it a while ago, it was either a homeless man around where he lived that used to scare him as a kid, or it was like the school caretaker or something, but it was all based on his experiences, you know.
Oh, nice. Well, not nice, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's nice that you can turn that into something, you know.
Exactly, yeah. Use those fears and create something.
Like Batman does.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, there you go. Wes Craven was Batman.
Yeah, Wes Craven is Batman, confirmed. Okay, so my pick for a horror villain is from the movie Misery, Annie Wilkes. Have you seen Misery?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, very good film. It's a Stephen King, or based on a Stephen King book, isn't it?
Yeah. So me and Sophie do have the book, and we've been sort of reading it together. We haven't finished it, but it's messed up, like as Stephen King's books are, really. So the whole concept in this is you have his name escapes me, an author of a book, book series called Misery, which is based on a character. Just look up the character's name now. What's his name? Paul Sheldon. Right. Anyway, he's in a car accident and he wakes up and he's in a bed in the room, doesn't know. And then Annie Wilkes comes in. She says that she found him on the road, and like they're stranded in their house because of the snow, and so she can't get him to a hospital. But she's got medication, or that she can look after him, nurse him back to health. It all seems okay, but it's obviously a bit unnerving that you're disabled, really, in the bed. You can't move. You got no way to get out of there. There's no phones. The phones are down, she says. You can't call anyone. And she's acting all sort of nice, but then she says she's a big fan of him. But then she finds out that he's killing off her favourite character, Misery, because he wants to be done with that series. And but then that's when like things get very, very nasty at that point. And sort of in reading the book and stuff, there's a bit, obviously we're talking about film, but there's a bit where it describes where she leaves him for like several days and he's got no food, no water, and in the narrative it's describing what he's experiencing in that time and trying to count how much time's passed by the clock and things like that. And it's really, really like messed up. But when you get down to it, where she's portraying herself as if she's really nice, and she loves it, and it's always a point where she loves him, and that can be scary in a way as well, to the point where when she finds out about like he's trying to escape and things like that, he's gotten into another room that he's not meant to go in, and she just takes that sledgehammer, and it's just, and then she's like, now you know not to do that again, don't you? Like, and it's just really terrifying that she's acting like she's being all nice about it. That just gets me, honestly. And I love films that are set in just one location. I absolutely love films that do that.
I think she even says, just as she's about to swing, doesn't she say like, this is for your own good or something like that? Yeah, your own good, like he deserves it, and she's doing him a nice thing by teaching him a lesson. And it's like, she doesn't think she's doing anything wrong. It's like some villains, like say Scar and Jafar, they know that they're evil, but and Freddy Krueger, he knows he's got a motive, I suppose, like he wants to get revenge or whatever, but still they must know what they're doing is evil. But Annie Wilkes, she doesn't know that. She thinks she's doing the right thing. She thinks he deserves it. I saw Misery a long time ago now, but Kathy Bates in that film is genuinely terrifying.
She won an Oscar.
For as much as and I mean, I remember that scene with the ankles, the ankle breaks.
Oh, that's horrible.
And I've seen some gory films in my time. I've seen some seriously gory films, but that was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the scream out, oh man, that it's a very powerful film. Yeah, that's a great pick, because such a difference to Freddy Krueger, who's a over the top, larger than life, obviously fake person. He's a character, whereas your Annie Wilkes could exist. And
I find that scarier in a way than monsters.
Absolutely. But it's not just that. It's just the character that acts like they're being nice. That's what gets me. Yeah. Great performance. Yeah, absolutely. That had to be my pick. Okay, so we've gone through horrors. We have got honourable mentions to go through on these categories later on, I think. But so we're going to go into the next category, which is called Other. So we've both picked 3 villains that don't really fit into those, although 2 of your characters fit into the horror category, I see. They just said they were overspills. I had to mention them. Just
3 other villains, so 6 other villains that we felt like we had to include. So who's your first? This one's a horror one.
Yeah, so my first one then, kind of, vying for top spot with Freddy Krueger was Chucky. Chucky the Killer Doll. Again, one of the first films I saw. I mean, that Nightmare on Elm Street was the first horror film that I saw, as I said. I think Child's Play 2, not the first one for some reason, was the first one I saw with my mum and dad knowing I'd seen it. So that was the first one I saw and was allowed to see, Yeah. And I loved it. Like, nowhere near as scary as Freddy back then for me. This was a very different sort of horror. But I just loved that film, still love that film to this day. And Chucky is just, again, such an icon of horror. Has gone through so many movies, and Brad Dourif has played him, obviously, for the vast majority, apart from one film, which I'll talk about in a minute. And there's now a TV show with Chucky.
Is there a TV show?
There is a TV show, yeah.
Wow.
I think it's called Chucky. I haven't seen it, I must say. But it's... he's that wisecracking, as you just said a minute ago, absolutely knows what an evil piece of work he is and doesn't care. He's he revels in how horrible he is and how nasty he is. And the story, the Lakeshore Strangler, Charles Lee Ray that gets gunned down and transfers his soul into the doll. It's a very intriguing story. It's quite interesting how the original story, the original script for Child's Play was very different, actually. I think it was called Blood Brothers. And what was going to be the twist at the end was... possibly, yeah, it is. I think it's a play, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he was going to be called Buddy in that film, which is why in the remake it's a Buddy doll.
Okay.
But in that film originally, it was going to have been in Andy's mind, and Andy was actually the killer.
All right.
So they completely changed it. They added the voodoo element to it.
Yeah.
So it was in the first film. In the original script, it was very much, is this in his head or is this doll real? Whereas in the film, they kind of made it. They kept that up for a little while in the first film, but ultimately made it quite explicit. But once Chucky was established, Child's Play 2 was the one where the character really kind of came to life. And I love how you've had, whilst his character's been very consistent, his personality, you've had different looks to him. Like, he got chopped up in the third film, so then in Bride of Chucky, he's got kind of the scars, and that was quite clever because obviously Bride of Chucky is a nod to Bride of Frankenstein, and he has kind of the Frankenstein staples and things in that film,
Yeah.
Just paying homage to classic horror. And then you had the remake. Have you seen the remake?
I've only seen the first 3 Child's Play films, but I only remember the first one.
Oh, okay, fair
enough.
enough.
Like Nightmare on Elm Street. I would like to see them though.
The remake was very different. It was kind of updated for a modern audience. They dropped the voodoo element of it, and it was an AI that had turned rogue, or had its inhibitors turned off.
Makes it more relevant for today, then, doesn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't like it, and I'm saying this as a huge Chucky fan. I actually liked where they went with it because it was kind of a metaphor, or an allegory rather, for parenting, because Chucky, although he doesn't have any inhibitors to stop him from doing the wrong thing, which he should have had, he's not inherently evil. He doesn't start the film as being evil. He's just capable of learning, and he sees young children doing the wrong thing, and he learns to be bad.
Okay, that sounds cool.
So it's quite clever. Yeah, I liked it, and it had oh dear me, his name's gone out of my head. That's embarrassing. Luke Skywalker, help me out.
Mark Hamill.
Well, thank you. Voicing Chucky, and he does a brilliant job.
And that's the thing with Mark Hamill. I didn't mention him as one of the Joker actors, did I?
No,
and that was mostly for the cartoons. But,
absolutely. But he starts very robotic because it is a robot, it's a doll. But then he kind of, as Chucky grows and learns, Mark Hamill comes in, and you get that kind of that evil, that sinister character
he
growth.
Can do that so well.
Yeah, it's great. I liked it. I know a lot of people didn't, but for a completely separate story that's nothing to do with, the mainline films, I liked it. I enjoyed it.
That's good. I do want to see that. But on another topic of doll films is, did you ever see a film called The Boy?
I haven't, and I want to see it because I've kind of half know the ending. I heard about the ending and stopped listening because I was like, actually, this sounds interesting. Yeah, and I don't want to, I want to watch that, so I stopped listening to what I was listening to, but I know of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's I won't spoil what happens, but it's about a woman that has to go be like a au pair for this boy, and turns out to be just a doll. Right. And the parents are saying it's real, whatever, but the real boy sort of has previously died. And
okay.
And then she's in the house alone with this doll, and it's like things are moving, and then she's not taking it seriously at first, but then creepy stuff happens, as you'd expect from this sort of film. But if you know the end, there's a twist to it, which I thought was really clever.
I need to watch this one then.
Yeah, watch it. It's such a clever twist. It might not be the greatest sort of horror film ever, but the twist I think was worth it. But don't see the sequel. The sequel kind of ruins the first one. So
that's a shame.
Yeah, once you've seen, talk to me once you've seen it, and I'll explain the sequel to you. Okay. So my next villain pick is from Lord of the Rings. I'm going to go with Gollum.
Oh, okay.
So there's sort of three main villains in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, being you got Sauron, who's like the big bad, but you hardly see him in the films. It's then you got Christopher Lee playing Saruman, and Christopher Lee's always a great villain. I'm sure we'll talk about Christopher Lee later on one of your honourable mentions. But then you got Gollum. Now, some people say that Gollum isn't really a villain. He's a hobbit. I don't know if he was a hobbit on some other creature, but called Smeagol. He finds the ring. He gets corrupted by it and becomes the creature Gollum. So it's kind of a sympathetic, but really he's got a dual personality. And Gollum is the dark side, and Smeagol is the good side, basically. So yeah, Gollum is the villain. Smeagol's not a villain. Gollum is. And you see the difference, and really this was such a revolutionary character because of the whole motion capture side of it with Andy Serkis. And
definitely.
Kind of like what we were saying about the Joker becoming a phenomenon with Heath Ledger, but everyone was doing Gollum impressions at the time, everywhere. And like advertising campaigns were capitalising on it and stuff. And basically there's this one scene in the Two Towers where Gollum is, like, Frodo and Sam are asleep, and Gollum is talking to himself, like Smeagol and Gollum, and then he talks as Smeagol, and then the camera pans around, and he turns around and he becomes Gollum and talks back, and eventually the scene carries on, and the camera stops panning, and so it cuts to the other angle, so it looks like there's two of them talking to each other side by side, and you really see the difference in the two characters there, where Smeagol decides to banish Gollum and it's just Smeagol there, and then he's nice for a lot of the film then, but then when he thinks Frodo's betrayed him, it's for a misunderstanding, Gollum sort of reappears in him, and they have another argument at the end, and Smeagol sort of obeys Gollum from then on, and really just the whole performance of Gollum, and obviously how impressive the technology was. I mean, even today it looks impressive, and it was like 20 years ago. Just Gollum's just such an iconic character. I really like him. Yeah.
I mean, through the Lord of the Rings, I never read the Lord of the Rings. I did read The Hobbit though, and he is in that as well. Not as much, but he's in it. Obviously, I've seen the films, all six of them, going across the two, series. But
he was the highlight.
Agree with you. He was, and Andy Serkis did a brilliant job, as you said. Really top stuff. Yeah.
And also, he's getting a video game to go back to gaming.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, it's called Lord of the Rings Gollum, I think.
Oh, okay.
Don't know what that entails, but we'll wait and see. Okay, so let's move on. So your next villain, I don't really know much about, so take the floor.
So my next pick then is Norman Bates.
Yeah, I've not seen Psycho, but I know of it.
Yeah, so Psycho, another book that was turned into a film actually. Obviously, Alfred Hitchcock directed it.
Yeah.
Known very well, I'm sure, for even people that haven't seen it, for the shower scene, the infamous shower scene. Another film with a twist, obviously. It's been out a long, long time now. I'm sure most people know the twist. But Norman Bates is quite possibly, as much as Freddy is my favourite, is quite possibly the best horror villain for me. And that's 100% down to Anthony Perkins' portrayal of him. He is, oh my word, he is brilliant. Like, I think he became typecast for a long time after Psycho for that kind of role, which is unfortunate for him as an actor, but you can really see why, because he was just unbelievable. Yeah. He kind of plays like this, like a, not innocent as such, but very naive character, looks after his mum, bit of a mummy's boy, but you can see he's kind of got this side to him, and you can't quite work out to start with what that side is. He's tempted to spy on a woman that's about to shower, and then he doesn't want to, and he kind of walks away, and he's biting his nails, and he's just got so many sides to his character. Once the first person is killed off, and Norman Bates discovers the body, and he dumps the person into their car, and he puts the car in the river, and there's this moment where the car stops sinking, and you can see the panic on his face, and then it starts to sink again, and he's just, Anthony Perkins, honestly, in this film is fantastic. And Psycho 2, oh, you really do, Dave. It's such a good film. Even to this day, it's held up so incredibly well. And Psycho 2, which was actually directed, it was created 20 years later or so, give or take, and Anthony Perkins reprised his role 20 years later.
Wow.
And it tells the story of his life as time's gone on. And even that's a brilliant film. I really love the second film. The third one, not so much, but Psycho 2 is a great film. And I just think, Norman Bates for me is probably the best horror villain, albeit not my favourite, but Anthony Perkins is 100% the reason for that. And it's kind of proved with the remake they did, which had Vince Vaughn in, because Vince just, you hear Vince Vaughn and you think, oh man, it's going to be putting comedy bits in. He didn't. He played it straight, but he just couldn't. Yeah, but he couldn't pull it off. Just couldn't pull it off. The film was basically pretty much a 100% shot-for-shot remake.
Really? Man.
Which really pulls in, it really shows the contrast between the two actors, because they're doing so many of the same things that it's hard not to compare. Vince Vaughn he doesn't even come close, not even close. And he certain things that they did make Norman Bates look like an absolute pervert. And I understand he's a villain, and there's nothing wrong with trying to up the ante of your villain, but Norman Bates was very naive. As I said, he was very naive. He was obviously, there was a part of him that was very dangerous, but that was the point. He was that other sort of dangerous villain where you're not quite sure if they're in control of their actions, whereas Vince Vaughn doesn't come across like that. They kind of spoilt that side of the character,
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes when you said about the Child's Play remake, when they're going to do a film remake, I'd rather it was different to the original, otherwise what's the point?
Absolutely. And there was one part I've heard that right at the start of the film, in the original film, Alfred Hitchcock wanted to do a shot where the camera goes from outside the building right through into the bedroom of the character in one shot, and because of the technology at the time, they couldn't do it. And the remake does do it, and it was like that's what a remake can do. It can update certain technical aspects.
Yeah.
But other than that, it doesn't really do anything else to update the film. So it kind of seems, it's not kind of, it is completely pointless.
Yeah.
But Norman Bates though is Anthony Perkins. Norman Bates is brilliant, and Bates Motel, which I've seen a couple of series
TV
of,
show,
and I can't remember. Yeah, the TV show. Sorry. As much as Perkins is Norman Bates, the actor who plays him in that, and again, sorry, his name escapes me. He does a great job of a younger Norman Bates. That's quite a good show.
Okay. Freddie Highmore.
Okay. That's worth watching.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. Brilliant. So I do want to. It's one of those bucket list films for me. Psycho.
Yeah.
So yeah. So for my next pick, is actually a character that doesn't have a name. I think he's just called the Sniper or the Caller from the film Phone Booth. You ever seen Phone Booth?
I have seen Phone Booth. Yeah, that's Colin Farrell, isn't it?
Colin Farrell. So the whole plot of Phone Booth, for those who don't see it, because I don't know how, it's a one-off film. I'm glad it is, because this could be tempting to do a sequel to this one. Colin Farrell's like this agent, and he's really like cocky, and he lies, and he goes to this phone booth every day, and this was like 2002, 2003. So for younger viewers, phone booths are these things in the streets where you could actually make phone calls to people. They don't really happen nowadays. And even back then, they were saying phone booths aren't a thing anymore. This is the last time this phone booth's going to be used, because it's being taken down. So Colin Farrell calls his wife. He has a wife, but he calls this actress lady, I think it was, and he's wanting to have an affair with her, basically. And then he gets the phone rings when he goes into this phone booth, and this voice talks to him, saying basically the whole thing sort of takes place sort of in real time, and this voice on the phone is saying to you, I know what you're doing, I know what you've been doing, and you shouldn't be doing it. I've got a sniper pointed at you right now. If you hang up, I'm going to kill you. And basically, he's being held prisoner in this phone booth for the whole film, and this really goes into Colin Farrell's character here, what he's done, and you don't really find out who this caller is. So they do a sort of reveal as to who this caller is at the end, because the police sort of catch him, spoilers, and then he's like, oh yeah, I recognise him, he was by me earlier delivering a pizza. But here's the problem. It's Kiefer Sutherland's voice. Now, at the time, Kiefer Sutherland was like a big star at the time, because he was in a show I mentioned earlier, 24, and I was a big fan of that show as well. And he has such a distinct voice, especially because he sort of narrates the beginning of every 24 episode with the previously on 24 thing, and what time it is and all that. So the fact is, you're trying to tell us that it was this pizza guy. No, that is not Kiefer Sutherland. Like, you're trying to keep a mystery. It is. It's Kiefer Sutherland's voice, and then Kiefer Sutherland appears at the end to say, "You'll hear from me if." But it's just the fact that you got this one guy who Colin Farrell has not wronged this guy at all, as far as we know, and this isn't the first victim of this sniper. And he says about these other victims he's had who sort of cheated other people, like said he made all the little guys lose all their money, whatever. And on this case, it's the fact that he lies to his clients, and the fact that he's preparing to cheat on his wife. And it's sort of like, first of all, in the time it's set in, this caller must have had such impressive technology to have traced all this. And what is his motivation for doing this? Is he just noticed? Like, he says that he's just someone who watches people out the window, makes up stories, then follows them, learns about them. If they're wrongdoers, he finds out more about them, and then he does what he does, holds them hostage in a phone booth with a sniper rifle, and gets them to come clean, gets them to do, and it's just, what is his motivation? You don't know. He just wants to, he's kind of like a vigilante, I suppose he thinks. Yeah.
It was a very clever concept, phone booth. Yeah. As you said earlier about, movies taking place all in one location.
Yeah. And
the complete
like with 24 taking place in real time as well.
Yeah. I agree with you. They cast an actor whose voice was so iconic it kind of spoilt the ending they were going for, or gave away the ending at least.
Yeah.
But that aside, it was still a very clever very clever idea, and I like the way that because at the start he's like, yeah, you're lying, you know, I'm going, and then he shoots like a little mechanical toy robot that some street vendor's got,
yes,
doesn't he? And he says like, you know, there you go, that proves it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and when the guy, the pimp that's opposite, 'cause that his the hookers want to use the phone for their business, you know. And
he starts punching it and stuff, doesn't he? Trying to get him out.
And then he's trying to get him out, and he's trying to bribe him with money, because that's all Colin Farrell knows how to do, just throw money at the problem.
That's it, yeah.
And it's like he says, because then the sniper shoots the pimp, and that's what gets the police in. And it's like when Colin Farrell's like says to the sniper, like, I tried to give him money, and the sniper says, but not your respect, and that's what he wanted. And it's like he's teaching him this lesson. He's trying to make Colin Farrell a better person, but he's just killed someone to do it. Like, so you know, his motivation, I could say about, like we were saying earlier, his motivation I understand. Like, this is a wrong do. He wants to teach him a lesson, but he's going the wrong way about it.
Yeah, his method is all wrong. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and obviously I've been rewatching through 24 recently a lot, so I'm very sort of riding high on Kiefer Sutherland at the minute as well. So, so yeah, I had to mention Phone Booth here. What a great film!
Yeah,
and
good film.
I'm so glad it's not been touched since, as far as I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so your next one is a film I know nothing about. I think it's the one with the box. Yeah, the one with the box. So again, major spoilers. Major spoilers. If you want to watch this film, please don't listen to this bit, because it's Seven. The film is Seven. Yeah. As I say, spoilers from this moment on. So the villain I'm gonna timestamp all the villains we talk about. Nice. So.
Cool. The villain is known as John Doe. He has no identity is ever revealed, but the premise of Seven is that you have this killer, and you know these murders are happening, and they are all aligning themselves with the 7 deadly sins, and the way that each victim is killed has something to do with one of the 7 deadly sins. It's a very difficult film to watch. It's quite a difficult watch because some of the murders are quite horrific, and there's one where this man has basically been left barely alive for like a year, and they find him in this room, and whilst they're looking at the body, he's still alive, and you don't realise to start with, and he's just like emaciated. He's barely a person anymore. Oh, it's terrible. But yeah, as I say, spoilers. But basically, in the end, the villain gives himself up because, as we said, all part of the plan. He gives himself in because he wants to prove the point. He wants to make his final point. And whereas in other films the villain kind of gets captured with an aim to release, to get out, this is not the case here. He basically sets up the policeman. I think at this point he's on 5 killings, if I remember rightly. And he basically, they're driving somewhere. He says, I'm going to take you to where the last 2 victims are. So they're driving in this car, and they get to this place in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, what's going on here? And this like FedEx van turns up and delivers a parcel. It's Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are the 2 policemen, by the way. Kevin Spacey plays John Doe, and this parcel's delivered. And long story short, it's Brad Pitt's character's wife's head in a box.
Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow.
And Gwyneth Paltrow, absolutely. And it's jealousy is the sin, because John Doe was jealous of Brad Pitt, and then Brad Pitt kills John Doe, and that's the 7th killing. And he's kind of made his point. He's got his message across. He did the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah. Wow.
It's just a very powerful movie. It's very powerful. Yeah. The villain's agenda is flawless. He gets, he does it. He achieves what he sets out to achieve. Kevin Spacey isn't in it very much at all. He's only in it for about 20 minutes, if that. But he's built up to be this, this thing of legend, this person of, this infamous killer. And then he gives himself in, and he looks quite meek and feeble, for want of a better word. And then, they kind of giving him a few slaps and, you piece of garbage and all this, but he ultimately wins, and it's a brutal film, and it's great performances all round.
Wow. Yeah, the first time I ever heard of this film was when my colleague was telling me about it, and he says to me, have you ever seen the film Seven? I was like, I've never heard of it. He goes, oh my god, you have to watch it, because it's Brad Pitt's in it, and sort of at the end he gets given a box with his wife's head in it, and I'm like, what? How?
Watch it now.
Yeah, why do people do that? Why do people do that? Just have to give away the ending to a film like that. Like, if you want someone to watch a film, don't tell them the ending.
Oh dear, yeah. That's a shame.
So, I was glad that you said the spoiler, because I couldn't have told the anecdote otherwise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But so anyway, my next villain, I know this is one you know anyway, so it's the T-1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Robert Patrick.
So in the original you had Arnie as the T-800, as the villain, the Terminator. But with this sequel, now I think Terminator 2 is, I put it number 1 on my favourite sci-fi films of all time, but I also put it number 1 on my favourite sequels of all time. They just really upped the ante a lot here, and that includes with the villains. Before you had the Terminator, who was like this indestructible living tissue over a robot, basically. But here you've got that again, but it can shapeshift. It can sort of turn to liquid, and the effects for the time as well, really impressive. And Robert Patrick's performance, it was just so good. He had the Terminator as well, because Arnie sort of was a good guy in this one, and they played a bit of comedy with him, like learning to smile and things like that. But for the sort of the stern villain, you had Robert Patrick for that, and at first they play it so that he's the hero and Arnie's still the villain. They sort of put it as a twist early on, but even watching back, and knowing he's clearly the villain. Even when he's sort of asking for directions, he's quite sinister about it, and the whole concept of this, like they have the bars down at one point and he just steps through them like into liquid. The fact that you just cannot get away from this thing, and it's unrelenting, just constantly chasing you. And I've said this before when we talked about horror games, the main sort of scariest thing for me in films and games is being chased. I just really hate that, and the fact that you got something constantly chasing you and just will not stop, I just find that scary.
Yeah, do you know what's funny about, you mentioned the twist there when they kind of set it up as if, is Arnold Schwarzenegger still, the bad guy. Do you know the trailer gave it away?
Really? They did that with Terminator. They did that with Terminator Genesis as well.
They did, yeah. They did learn their lesson, because way back then in whatever it was, 1991, whatever it was, if you watch the trailer, the scene where they're in the shopping centre and Arnie's walking towards him and he's got like a box
Guns and
of
Roses.
Like roses or something. Guns and Roses, absolutely. And he says, "Get down." They show that in the trailer.
Oh my
and they
God.
give it away that it's ridiculous. I can't believe they did that to this day. But
although in that in the defence though of this one, I would say that in the fact that twist happens so early on in the film, like what clips from the film can you show in a trailer that doesn't give away that Arnie's the hero?
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I mean, that's what teaser trailers are for, I suppose, just to give you a little glimpse. But they always go and do their 2-3 minute one that gives too much away, don't they?
Oh yeah, that's the same with games as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. The other thing as well, going back to Psycho, did you know that there's a trailer for Psycho of Alfred Hitchcock just basically telling you everything that happens in the film?
Is there?
Yeah, look it up. It's just it's just Hitchcock. He's going around the sets of the film and he's just saying everything that happens, basically.
Man, it's crazy.
Yeah. And also, again, with the effects of Terminator 2, it's such a good film, and with his shapeshifting, he takes the form of other characters as well. and they make use of they use identical twins in these scenes, like with the security guard where he goes through the eye, and also Linda Hamilton has an identical twin as well, because they do the whole he's impersonating Sarah, and this was just such a good character, good film, one of my favourites, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's a great film. I'm going to be honest, I do prefer Arnie as the villain from the first film, mainly because I think the first Terminator is more of a horror film, where the second is more of a sci-fi film.
Yes.
And I just liked that horror element. He doesn't speak as much, he's not as charming, although Robert Patrick is still quite intimidating, or he does have that little bit of charm to him as well. The T-800 was just pure, I'm going to kill you until I find the right one, you know what I mean? Like, the way he's going around killing Sarah Connors as well, I thought was quite scary, So but I do think the T-1000 was... Yeah, it does, but the T-1000 was great as well, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, and also the stop-motion robot at the end, that scared me when I was younger.
Yeah.
More so than a CG one.
Yeah, me and my cousins used to do that. Like, we used to play Terminator games where one of us was the Terminator and we had to try and grab the others. It's funny, isn't it, how you these popular culture icons.
But you're saying you prefer Arnie as a villain there. I prefer Arnie as a villain in Batman, which brings me rather neatly onto the comedy villains.
Oh, man, yeah. Oh, dear.
Do you like my segue there?
That was good, yeah. That was good.
We can talk about Mr. Freeze for a bit first, if you want.
Mr. Freeze. So that's actually a line from the film. There you go. Like, I delivered it better than George Clooney as well. Oh,
excellent writing. Freeze, you're mad.
Freeze, you're mad. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. The ice puns. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what my favourite line from that film is?
Which one?
It's when there's towards the end, where is it an observatory they're in at the end, or some sort of lab? It's
something like that. It's like where the telescope is or something.
Yeah.
So I can't remember.
There's these two scientists there.
Oh yeah.
And at one point, the telescope thing's swinging round towards them, and one of the scientists shouts, "It's one of those days."
Oh yeah.
It's like, why did he say that?
Oh, it's such a terrible film.
Yeah.
I was watching it earlier, like I said, with my daughter. I only got about 40 minutes in, so I don't remember all of it at the minute. But do you know what? It did show me. I always put it down to George Clooney being in a bad film, but George Clooney is terrible in it.
Yeah.
It's not just that it's a bad film. George Clooney is just bad in it. It really, I didn't realise how bad he was in it. And
George Clooney's shown he can act really well in other things.
Oh, he's a very good actor, but in that film, his delivery is appalling. I mean, he's given a script that's not worth the paper it's written on, but even so, his delivery is so bad. It's wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's go on to our real picks. So we've got two comedy villains each. Let's go on to your first one.
Okay, right. My first one then is it's Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
What a great film!
Oh, it's a brilliant film. I'm very, a film I remember from my childhood. Such a unique film, and it had lots of characters from different. It had Disney characters in there at one point, didn't it? Mickey Mouse and
Bugs Bunny together.
Yeah, and it's just such a clever film, and the Judge Doom character is it's the stuff of nightmares for a lot of kids back then, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The animation style with mixed in with live action was very clever. Bob Hoskins, brilliant, absolutely brilliant as what was his name? Is it Eddie Valent or something, wasn't it? Something like that. Valent, I think his name was. Great film. Also
Eddie
based
Valiant.
on a book. Valiant, that was it, not Valent. Sorry. Yeah, also based on a book. Did you know that?
Who censored Roger Rabbit?
Who censored Roger Rabbit, which was so wildly different to the movie, and the writer, when he wrote a sequel, actually retconned his own book because he liked the film so much.
Oh wow. It's not often. It's not often an author would do that based on a film.
No, Yeah, but Judge Doom is my pick. He was just
Christopher Lloyd for a start.
Christopher Lloyd, of course. Yeah, but spoilers again. But the end, the big reveal, obviously, that he is a toon, as they're called, and then the big eyes and the acid or whatever it's called now. It's not called acid, is it? But
when I killed your brother, I talked just like this.
Yeah, it's great. Such a good film.
Yeah, like he gets steamrollers and then he sort of pumps himself up again.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's one of those as well, and it's kind of like Hot Fuzz with Timothy Dalton. You got this mystery, but you got this character who's clearly the villain.
Yeah. But what's funny, actually, it's kind of moving away from Roger Rabbit, but you mentioned Hot Fuzz. What's very clever about that film is the way that he is clearly the villain, but he's clearly got an alibi, and then it's obviously revealed how at the end.
There's loads of them in on it.
Yeah. But great stuff.
Yeah. So moving on to my first comedy villain pick, and I'd like to do my two picks one after the other because I've got a good segue for this. So my first one is probably one of the first comedy villains people would think of in general, and that's Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers films.
Yeah, definitely.
So Dr. Evil just personifies every Bond villain there is, pretty much, with all the tropes, all the layers, the plans he has. He's based, visually he's based on Donald Pleasant's Blofeld, with like the bald head and the scar, and obviously the fact that in the sequel he has a clone, Mini-Me. That's probably a nod to Blofeld having clones in Diamonds Are Forever. And basically, obviously Austin Powers is a comedy, and you have the funny spy who's quite goofy and shagadelic, all that. But it's one of those films where the villain is actually funnier than the hero here.
Yeah,
Like you have scenes where you find out he has a son, and you've got scenes with him at like a family counselling group, and he's trying to bond with his son. And and there's bits where like he's playing the piano with Mini-Me, and I'm like, you're plotting to destroy the earth and stuff, and you're just doing things like that, and then doing a rap number, and it's like it's just so bizarre. And the fact that he was played by Mike Myers, who also played Austin Powers, you got the hero and villain played by the same actor as well. So this really is Mike Myers' film, and then he plays other characters in the other sequels as well. But man, what an iconic villain this is, really.
I always I remember the line. It's my favourite line in the whole series, where he's telling his master plan, and then he does the whole, and I will hold them to ransom for $1 million, and then it's like, yeah, that's not that much money anymore.
$100 billion.
Yeah.
And then he says it, and when he goes back to the 60s, he says it again, but they all laugh again because, that kind of money doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's very good. Very great way to kind of mock the stereotypical villain, but do it in a very loving way.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm going to put him in an easily escapable situation involving an elaborate and exotic death.
Yeah. And the way whenever a henchman was killed, it showed his family waiting for him to come home, or...
Yes. And also, a little trivia, the one that gets his head bitten off... No, not the one with the head. The one that gets crushed by the steamroller, when it shows that his wife and son at home, the wife is played by Lois Chiles, who was Dr. Holly Goodhead in Moonraker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, little Bond trivia there. I know my Bond trivia. And also, the leader of the family counselling group was Carrie Fisher.
Oh, really? I didn't realise that.
It's one that I never noticed that was her until I was told. Yeah, a bit off topic. But yeah, even then, after he sends Austin Powers to his death, and with the unnecessarily slow dipping mechanism, and then closes the tank, and he does that little bit with Scott where he keeps on going shh to him, like.
Oh yeah, I've got a whole bag of shh with your name on it.
Knock knock, who's there? Shh. It's just little things like that where he's meant to be this evil villain, like serious, gonna destroy the world thing, but he's doing little petty things like that, which were probably improvised. Let's be honest.
Yeah, more than likely.
But my favourite thing about this is in the third film, when he goes to talk to the world leaders to make his threat, when they open it up, the world leader, one in charge, just goes, "What is it, Dr. Evil?" As in, like, rolling his eyes, "What is it now?" Like, doesn't even take him seriously anymore. And in a way, sort of, from after the Bond film after the Austin Powers had ended, was the Casino Royale reboot, where it became a bit more grittier and, you know, so it's kind of like after Austin Powers, Bond couldn't really continue the campy villain thing, could they?
That's true. No, that's very true.
No, I do want them to go back to that, though.
Yeah.
So, one sort of defining thing about Dr. Evil is the fact that he was played by the same actor as Austin Powers.
Mm-hmm.
But did you know that wasn't originally the case?
No? Who was going to play, do you know?
Originally, Jim Carrey was going to play Dr. Evil.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that at all, actually.
It's because of scheduling conflicts, he couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
And obviously, Jim Carrey would have been a good fit for the character, but you say it wouldn't have been the same, which, no, it wouldn't have been the same, but we wouldn't have known the difference, would we, back then, if we hadn't seen Mike Myers in the role. But I mean, Jim Carrey would have been a lot more over the top with it, but it would have worked, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he was at the peak of his powers back then, wasn't he, really?
Yeah, he was like the height of comedy back then.
Yeah,
he was box office gold, and because the first Austin Powers was successful, but it wasn't really like a huge, you know, runaway success, and it was the sequels that did that.
Right.
So, but maybe if Jim Carrey was Dr. Evil, then the first one would have done much better, but we'll never know.
Yeah, quite possibly, yeah.
But this is my clever segue, because Jim Carrey has gone on to play another comedy villain, and that being Dr. Robotnik in the recent Sonic films. Are you familiar with the Sonic films?
I haven't seen them. I haven't seen either of them. I've seen snippets, and I've seen Jim Carrey become like increasingly more and more like Robotnik in terms of his looks. Is that what happens through the films? Does he kind of change his appearance, or? Yeah.
So basically, I've said this before. I mean, I like both Sonic films. The first one was it wasn't the Sonic film I wanted, but for what it was, I still enjoyed it. The second one was pretty much the Sonic film I wanted, although because they have to do the whole Sonics in the human world, you know, and in the second one they bring in Tails and Knuckles, and Jim Carrey looks more like Robotnik. They do the whole hunting the Chaos Emeralds, which is the main story from the games. So they do all that well, but they have to still cutting back to the human characters with their shenanigans that we don't care about for some reason. If you could have cut out all the human stuff and lost nothing, but that's another story. So with this, when I first heard that Jim Carrey was cast as Robotnik, I thought, that's just not right. Like, obviously I'm a big fan of Jim Carrey, but he's not right for Robotnik. On seeing the film, he's not right for Robotnik, but at the same time he's perfect.
Right. Okay.
See, he doesn't play the character Robotnik from the games, he just plays Jim Carrey from the 90s. But at the same time, I'm a big fan of Jim Carrey from the 90s, and what he does, he's just funny.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm glad also that they called him Robotnik in the films and not Eggman from the games, which I know that's his original name, but I still used to calling him Robotnik. But he has these drones in it that are egg-shaped, and that's why Sonic starts calling him Eggman, so that's how they bring that name into there. And he has the iconic line saying, here's what I've got in my egg sack, he says at one point, because like, okay, kids movie. But so Jim Carrey has recently sort of stated that he's like retiring from acting.
I was just about to ask you about that. Is that will that affect a third film, or is there no plan for a third film? Or?
Well, obviously this is spoilers, isn't it? So in the second film, Robotnik gets the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and he sort of becomes all powerful. He builds this giant robot to take him down. So Sonic tells and Knuckles team up to fight him back, and they end up getting control of the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic becomes Super Sonic and destroys him. Robotnik sort of falls to his death, it seems, because they're quite high up. But in the post credits, they're sort of in the area, and they say Robotnik's body's not found, so they've left it open for him to have survived and coming back for the next one. But at the same time, he could just be gone. So they've said they're not going to recast Robotnik. But I'm sure the fact that this film, Sonic Hedgehog 2, is the biggest, had the biggest opening weekend of any video game movie, which is not a high bar to go above. Yeah. But surprisingly, it's the biggest opening weekend of any Jim Carrey film.
Oh wow! I didn't realise that.
That's not adjusted for inflation, so you know, if you adjust for inflation, I'm sure it's not. But so I'm sure they could get enough money together to tempt him back, hopefully. So
I'd heard. I didn't see the interview or anything, but I just heard someone say that he'd mentioned that in the third film he wanted them to make Robotnik big, like large, fat, if you like.
And then a few weeks later, he said,
yeah, and then a few weeks later he'd said he'd retired. So I was expecting that he'd said that because there was a third film kind of in the works, and then I was quite surprised to hear he'd retired.
Yeah, it would. But I mean, if he also said in that statement that he's gonna at least take a break. So if it's a couple of years until the next one, maybe.
Maybe.
Because basically, I've said spoilers already. In the post-credits thing, they're setting up Sonic Adventure 2 as the next one. Because they show off Shadow waking up in the lab. Which, by the way, and I went on why do people have to spoil things? On the opening weekend of Sonic, I didn't see it straight away. I was doing a live stream and someone came on in the chat and said, is there going to be another Sonic movie? Because Shadow was in it at the end. Like, why would you do that?
Oh dear.
Yeah, anyway. So let's move on to your other comedy villain.
Right, well mine, I mean, I had to get a Turtles. I had to get the Turtles in there somewhere. Just had to. And I've gone for Shredder from the 1980s cartoon. But because basically towards the end they made him a joke. He was completely incompetent. You know, in the first few, there was the first series, if you like, of the cartoon was only 5 episodes long, to set it up and to see if it had any legs. And he was quite good in that. He was quite, menacing and competent. And then he just became increasingly worse as the show went on. And I think they actually got rid of him in the end. I think the last series or 2 didn't even have Shredder in it.
Yeah.
So whilst I don't like a comedic, or not comedic, but a bad Shredder in terms of competence, I love the show so much that if the only way to get him in here is to put him in the comedy section, then so be it, you know.
Well, did you like the bit where he goes, "I want to conquer Earth"?
It was cringy by the end, him and Crane, but it is what it is, and it was all good fun, wasn't it?
You've sort of, because obviously we're talking about movie villains. Was there a movie of this TV show to make this legal?
Of the 80s show,
yeah.
You had Turtles Forever, actually, which was a movie.
Okay,
so yeah, there you go. It legitimises it. Yep.
Otherwise, you have to put Toka and Razar in there, the babies, and Vanilla Ice.
Yeah. No, it's in there. It can be in there. It's fine.
You could have like Bebop and Rocksteady from that newer one, where they keep going "my man" to each other.
I did quite like that as a guilty pleasure. I've got to be honest.
Rocksteady in that is played by a wrestler called Sheamus.
I did hear that. Yeah. Not that I know anything about wrestling, but I did hear he was a wrestler. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we've gone through all the villains. We've been talking for like 2 hours, haven't we? So
it's been a long one, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I like this. So let's run through some honourable mentions. You had more than I did. But one thing I didn't put on the list here, actually, I should mention Darth Vader. Just,
Yeah, absolutely.
Darth Vader's iconic.
I mean,
so, Darth Vader, very
iconic as they come, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Definitely.
Right, so let's go.
Okay, mine then. My first one was actually it was on my list, but I kind of downgraded him, and that's Max Cady from Cape Fear.
Yes, I've seen Cape Fear. Is this the Robert De Niro version?
Played by Robert De Niro. I've never seen the original,
Yeah.
Just such a nasty piece of work. He's got this vendetta against the man and his family as a result of that. He was convicted for a crime and held it against his defence lawyer. That he went to prison. But it's the way that the film deals with the fact that you just can't escape this bloke. He follows him round. The police can't do anything about it. He tries to take matters into his own hand, and it goes quite badly wrong. Just a really, obviously De Niro does a good job in the role, but it's more just the setting and the way that you just feel trapped. You can't escape this person,
Oh yeah. See, I saw this film when I was like 17 or 18.
Right.
But the problem is, this film was kind of ruined for me a little bit because there's a Simpsons episode called Cape Fear, not at all associated with the movie Cape Fear. It's a Sideshow Bob episode, and they parody it so well with the music and the scenes, all that, but in a comedy way, that when I watched this film, I was just, I was just thinking about Sideshow Bob stepping on the rakes and things like that. But I did still, I saw through that still, and what a film.
Yeah, it's a great film.
It left an impression on me.
Absolutely. My next one he just has to be. It's Dracula. Dracula's on here.
Oh yeah, that's the Christopher Lee reference from earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd be more so. It's Bela Lugosi as Dracula, but any iteration. Gary Oldman. There's been so many over the years, obviously, but
Adam Sandler.
I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of the Universal monster movies, from the 30s going all the way through to the 50s, I guess, really. But Dracula is just, it's a fantastic story. The original novel was kind of told through diary entries, actually, which was quite interesting. Possibly a lot of people don't realise that. Something that the film from the 90s kind of tried to replicate at times. But the Bela Lugosi Dracula has just become so iconic. I don't think one actor has ever had such an influence on what then that character becomes. Everyone copies that Bela Lugosi Dracula these days.
Like a real trendsetter.
Absolutely. It came out in I think it was like 31, maybe 33, around about that time. And it's just unbelievable what an impact it had on popular culture. Yeah. So Dracula's got to be on here. Because
Dracula's public domain, anyone can make a film about him or feature him in a film as well.
Right. I didn't realise it was public domain. So so you've obviously had so many iterations, but it's amazing how much that image, I beg your pardon, has held up in the same way that the Frankenstein monster from that time has done the same. And still, you have that iconic image of that character.
Have you ever read the novel?
I haven't. I've read. Sometimes you read about a book rather than read the book itself. Do you ever do that?
Yeah.
So I kind of know a lot about it and the differences between versions and stuff. But I must admit I've never actually read the novel. No.
Because Sophie had got the audio book of it on Audible, and the book is sort of like a diary, apparently. But the person that was reading the audiobook out was doing all these weird voices for the characters that she couldn't take it seriously.
Right.
So so read it, don't listen to it. It's if you want to get the effect, I'm guessing.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to? Should I do another one, or do you want to do your one? Or
I'll do mine. I've only got one more I could think of, and that is Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home as well. So this is what's his the actor's name again? I keep forgetting.
Oh,
Alfred Molina.
Melina, that's it. Yeah.
So he is Otto Octavius. He's a scientist who's working on this bit. I can't remember. It's sort of like this energy sources that he's working on.
Yeah, it's a renewable energy source, isn't it?
Yeah, referring to it as the power of the sun in the palm of his hand. And he's basically showing it off to his investors and the media. And he then tells you, I've got these mechanical arms that can... Obviously, I'm going for the film version specifically, not the cartoons or comics. And he's got this mechanical arms that have AI controlled and all that. He goes, but I've got this very, very fragile chip on the back of my neck, a very, very breakable, that keeps me in control of them. And lo and behold, that gets broken. And then the real thing that sets this villain apart for me is that scene in the hospital where the doctors are trying to remove the arms, and it's all sort of silent, and they come to life and attack him. And then it's when he realises he's lost everything, and he does like the whole classic sort of no sort of thing. But I think they do it really well, that sort of scene in this one. And the character itself just lends itself some great action scenes as well.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, the hospital scene was... Because obviously Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man 2, and that was kind of a little nod to his Evil Dead films.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a very good film. Actually, it's held up quite well, Spider-Man 2. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. And Octavius is a great villain. Yeah.
Okay, one of yours now.
Okay, yeah, I've only got two left. So very briefly, I mean, my next one is Sadako, who is the main antagonist from the Japanese Ring films. Yeah,
I've not seen that. Seen it, but I know who you mean.
Yeah, in the American version, she was called Samara, but she was called Sadako in the Japanese ones. And the reason I picked this one is because, quite interesting, in the Japanese timeline or the series, you had the first one, Ring, and then you had two different Ring 2s. One was called Rasen, and one was just called Ring 2. And it took the character in two completely different directions. And then you had a prequel that came out that kind of built up quite a tragic backstory. And without going on too long, I know this has been a long video, but I just really liked the way that this character was built up. And then you had these kind of ultimate timelines almost that took them in different directions,
Yeah.
And my last one, quite possibly one of the most sinister villain on the whole list. And the only reason it's getting just an honourable mention is because I've only seen the film once and I don't remember a huge amount about it. But it's Christoph Waltz again, and it's Colonel Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've only seen the film once, and it's been a while ago. But his portrayal in that film is terrifying. There's a scene right at the beginning where he's talking to this man. He's a Nazi, and there's a scene at the beginning. He's talking to this man in his house, and he knows this man is harbouring Jewish people somewhere in his house, and he just sits down and has a chat with this person. This is right for like the first scene of the film, and it just becomes very apparent very quickly just what an absolutely terrifying man this character is. And then obviously through the rest of the film you'll see more of his more reason to believe this. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the film. I didn't think it was amazing, but his villain in it is unbelievable, really, because it really shows what Blofeld could have been,
Oh yeah, definitely. So here's the thing, interesting fact about Christoph Waltz here. So he won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for that character.
Oh, okay, right. I didn't know that.
So he won Best Supporting Actor for playing a Nazi, but he also won Best Supporting Actor for playing an anti-racist person in Django Unchained. So two complete opposite characters, and he won an Oscar for both of them.
Shows the range of the man in terms of being an actor, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You said that was the last one, but I've got Ivan Drago written down as well.
Oh, I did put Ivan Drago, yeah. And the reason for this one, actually, sorry, I forgot about that one, because obviously you had Rocky IV, where he was kind of your stereotypical silent not evil. Obviously, he was a boxer at the end of the day. But they built him up to be the villain with the "if he dies" line and stuff. When again spoilers, when he kills Apollo Creed in the ring. But then I really liked what they did with his character in Creed 2. So many years later, dealing with his son being a boxer and fighting the son of Apollo Creed.
I've not seen Creed 2, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't say too much then. But Ivan Drago is in that, and they kind of give him he's got a nice story arc, and it's quite a satisfying way to see this character again after so many years. I'll leave it as that. But
nice.
I thought he deserved a place on this list because of that.
Yeah. Cool. So that's a lot of movie villains we've gone through. So we'll finish off with some viewer questions. You ready for them?
Yep.
Cool. So Charlie has asked us a few here. So what's been the biggest surprise about running a YouTube channel?
In all honesty, how much hard work it is. This is probably the biggest one. You really don't realise when you first start,
Yeah, you do, because even when it's just I see a video of someone talking to a camera and that's it, actually there's a lot more to it than you can't just put a camera on you and just talk. I mean, some people probably can, but you need to script it, you need to make sure rewrite it, and then you'll say something and then you'll say it wrong, you have to do it until you get it just right, then the editing just takes forever. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a long process. Which I didn't.
When you watch a YouTube video, you're seeing is the 10 minutes that's there, but you're not seeing like the 5 hours that 10 minutes took to make. Absolutely, and especially if you're reviewing games. I mean, just the hours that goes into playing it to begin with, to capturing the footage, to writing the script, to recording the audio, to making the video. Yes, I was quite naive when I started and didn't realise just how much hard work it actually is. Yeah. So if you could completely forget one game and get to play it again for the first time, which would it be? Probably. I mean, I've already mentioned it at the start, but it would be Super Mario 64. It's interesting. For the reasons that we stated. Would it be going back to that time though, or would it be now? It would have to be. No, if you did that now, it wouldn't impress you because it's been done so many times since. You would have to go back to that time. Yeah, of course. when that wasn't the norm, and experience it again from there. Yeah. For me, that is tempting. I'd probably say Ocarina of Time. Yeah. And not let my brother make me read the strategy guide to him when he played it first. Yeah, that's fair. So next one, have you seen the Cuphead cartoon? I heard the game is impossible to beat. Well, funny you should mention that, Charlie, because I never mentioned this, but I've actually beaten Cuphead. Yeah, never quite mentioned that. Never heard you say that before. So no, I haven't seen the cartoon. I've heard it's good. I have heard it's good, but I've seen 2 episodes. I was more into it on the second episode than the first. Right. Yeah, it is good. It kind of reminds me of, although the game is sort of very reminiscent of the 30s cartoons, and it kind of looks like it's straight from that era, the cartoon doesn't look like a 30s cartoon. It kind of looks like the newer Mickey Mouse cartoons, where it's modern. It's still sort of that 30s style, but modern. And that's kind of. And I do really like that new Mickey Mouse cartoon, by the way, and so I do like this style, but it's different from the game. Right. Okay. Okay. So, what game would you like to see ported to Switch? And are there any games you want ported to a different console? I would like to have all of the Resident Evil games in one place. So probably, it's not going to happen, but Ideal World 7 and 8. I mean, my answer, if you'd have asked me a couple of months ago, would have been Turtles in Time, but obviously that's happening now. So that's coming, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. How about yours? See, that's the thing. In 2 weeks' time, me and Asdin have this very conversation planned. Right. So my obvious answer would usually be Banjo-Kazooie, but that's on the Switch now. I'm going to say Gold. I'm going to say GoldenEye. Nice. Yeah. Good I'll say GoldenEye because I don't think that's likely. Yeah. Okay, so which century do you think Hollow Knight Silk Song will be released? I'm going for 2445. 24th.
2445, that's the year it's going to come out, I think.
I think it will come out in the 21st century. It will come out before Half-Life 3. There we go. Okay, this is one I've been thinking about all day, and I think I've got a good answer for this. If you could take one item out of a game in real life, what would it be?
Oh dear. I don't know, that's a tough question. Maybe the portal gun from Portal helps you get about that bit quicker.
Portal gun?
Yeah.
That was my answer.
Are you joking?
I've been thinking about this all day because I thought, but that could be dangerous because you could end up infinitely falling and things like that. But I actually thought about this. What I would do if I had a portal gun is I would shoot it on the wall in my back garden, and then I'd shoot the other one in one of the sheds at the back in the yard where I work, so I could just get to work easily without having to drive. And thank you so much for those questions. Glen's audio has cut out here because he's run out of memory on his computer, he tells me. So he can't talk anymore on this podcast, so I'm going to have to bring it to an end here. So thank you so much, Glen, for joining me on this one. Make sure you check out his channel, link in the description. And thank you so much for hanging around to the end of this podcast. And we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much, everyone.